All right, this is Think or Be Eaten, and we're with Larry, the contractor guy, again. And he's been going through Nazism, and along with the ominous parallels, I mean, you have access to a lot of information, and we're not really happy about the fact that it looks like it's happening here, but it is. Now, what also happened was, with this whole thing that happened with my server and all the shows that were gone, the Nazi series Part 4 just disappeared. So what Larry's going to do today is reprise the long-lost Part 4, but he's also going to introduce what's going on today with something he wants to speak to. And I don't know. I mean, he just told me he wants to speak to the National Alliance and William Pierce and the boys. So, yeah, I don't know what's coming, but I'm happy to hear it. And, Larry, thanks a lot for coming back, and it's good to talk to you again.
It's great to be here. I was going to talk about an article about the neo-Nazis in 9/11. It's written by Jack McCarthy in Counterpunch magazine, 10/29/2001.
Yeah, it's a long time. I was wondering, yeah.
Yeah. At any rate, he said in the article, upon perusing his speeches from 1998 to 99, I discovered that Pierce, who heads the so-called National Alliance, did indeed utter some most interesting pre-9/11, if not prophetic, remarks about Osama bin Laden and bioterrorism. The running theme in Pierce's commentaries is, to paraphrase his hero Hitler, that Osama bin Laden's warning to America is I am coming, and so is bioterrorism. In one chilling commentary, Pierce, after noting that bin Laden and the rest of the lost generation of angry Muslim youth had had it with their parents' compromises and were hell-bent on revenge against infidel America, issued this stark prophetic warning in a 1998 radio address titled, Stay Out of Tall Buildings, and quote, New Yorkers who work in tall office buildings, anything close to the size of the World Trade Center, might consider wearing hard hats, Pierce warned. Well, I brought this up to give you the actual quote from Pierce. We had talked about it earlier. It was talking about 9/11 and the neo-Nazi connections to it. I don't think Pierce would have made that statement if he didn't have some knowledge beforehand, or at least a very good hunch that the Islamic wing of the New World Order, the Islamic Nazi wing, would have something to do with domestic terrorism.
How do you come down on this? Do you have an opinion?
I do. I think that quite a long time ago that the Islamist, and this dates back to Egypt in the 1950s and even before that, the old Third Reich, which is morphing into the Fourth Reich. Hitler always had an idea that they could use the Muslims, the radical Muslims, to forward their aims. In other words, as proxy warriors. That's not to say that they really were totally behind the Muslims. They considered the Muslims also to be a quote trash race. In fact, Hitler once made a statement about the Muslims, or about Arabs, I should say, saying that they were, I think he described them as lacquered apes who need to be whipped. So you can see right there a little racism involved with that one. But yeah, I do think that they have connections with what I would call international fascism, or the Fourth Reich, or if you prefer, the New World Order. I think they have a very central place in it.
But that's also the case. Now, I want to mention, I forgot who did this. I used to have a great deal more respect for his research. I don't know that I do anymore. I don't know. I forget who it is. It'll come to me. And he, I don't know why I was even looking around for his stuff, but he had some chapter of his book in which it's called Proof that the Israelis knew 9/11 was going to happen in the 80s. Now, there were some comments made. I can't remember at the time. I don't know if it was Netanyahu that was mentioned. It doesn't make a difference. Okay, so it's in the 80s. And okay, it was kind of general in the sense that, someday, you may be attacked. They may attack New York. Well, okay, first of all, I'm not doubting that was said, but to go ahead and say that that is proof positive, I mean, that would not hold up in court. You know, and it's just that, and here's where I'm going with it. As you've heard me say, growing up around the towers when they're being built, every kid, and we were kids at the time when this started, like 14 or so, and we watched them get bigger and bigger, and we all said the same thing. Someone's going to fly a plane into that. Because they begged almost, it was like somebody pointing to his big nose and say, go ahead, punch it. Someone's going to punch it.
Yeah.
And of course, when you see some of these things that I had up on my site a time ago, you know, about video games prior to to 2001, where a plane flies in it. You see, some of this is just that it looked like it was going to happen. People expected it to happen. They expected probably an airliner going off, on its approach, or on its approach like a JFK or LaGuardia. Okay, what am I saying? There's a certain understanding that America might get attacked one day, and what would be a good place, so to speak, to attack New York? Well, it would be New York or D.C. I think everybody would say that first.
Yeah.
So it was in, what do you want to call it, the collective consciousness, that this might happen. And some of these remarks, I think, evince that. And also, even if it's foreknowledge, then what I would say to me, Larry, I mean, weigh in on this yourself. To me, it's a script. And even if it's a radical Islam that's supposed to do it, that's the script. I mean, that's the way it is then.
Yeah, they're kind of using them as proxy warriors.
The
Underground Reich, or the Fourth Reich as I see it, has an above ground and mostly an underground element. You know, it's kind of a virtual state. I mean, they don't have necessarily the entirety of any nation's army to carry out their aims, but they have to carry out their aims to further the cause of the New World Order in some way. And radical Islam, as they've recruited people out of that to do what they need to do. It's awful complicated. I definitely don't have it all figured out, don't have any definitive answers. But the reason I think that Pierce knew something there and had been given some kind of foreknowledge of what was going to happen is because he seems to have had some kind of knowledge involved with terrorism in this country. Period. It's not a secret that Timothy McVeigh and company, as well as another Nazi terror group called the Order, had used his book, The Turner Diaries, sort of as a blueprint for the things that they were doing, domestic terrorism. And at the end of the Turner Diaries, the main character flies a small plane into the Pentagon. So I mean, it's like some of this stuff kind of foreshadows. It's just very strange, very odd. You know, he could foreshadow events that were going to happen a few years down the line. And also, in 1998, I don't even think, not that I'm the most informed guy in the world, but I don't think Osama bin Laden was really on my radar, as far as like, I think, I don't remember what year the attack on the Cole took place, but I remember that he and his group were supposedly associated with that. And I know that the Mujahideen, in Afghanistan, he was definitely associated with that. But the idea of him and his group flying planes into large, tall buildings in New York, that's I don't know. It just seems, a little more than coincidence that he would say that.
Well,
that's just my opinion.
No. Well, that's what I asked for. I mean, yeah. No, and one of the things too we've forgotten about. I don't know if the website's still there. You can go to Wayback Machine. I guess it's still there. But it was unansweredquestions.com or something. And there they had a speech. This is when this movement first started. And Catherine Austin Fitz was in it, and Kyle Hentz and John Judge and these other people whom I've come not to trust.
Yeah.
But there was a speech given by the former, I believe at the time, former National Transportation Safety Board head. It's Mary Schiavo. And she makes a point about terrorism via airliner being more prominent than we really do remember.
Mm-hmm.
And flying into buildings being one of the modus operandi. And so that was there too. Mm-hmm. So what I'm wondering about, I'm not making an excuse of Pierce by any means, but you know what? I mean, even if you hate to say it, Pierce to me, I think was a pretty bright man.
Oh, he was extremely bright. He had a PhD in physics and used to teach at Oregon State University. You know, I mean, you don't get into a position like that unless you're a very intelligent person.
No, you know, and like I said, not that I went for it, but I will tell you this. Harry used to kid me and slide me National Alliance audios, you know, links and stuff, mm-hmm. when Pierce was alive. Mm-hmm. And I'll have to admit it, he could carry it, and he didn't get, like, lost in some of this rhetoric.
Yeah.
Just, like you said, addressing issues and such. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I could listen to it, and of course, you know I love the line he came out with. It just had me howling. When he called Shrub, you know, what did I call?
A feckless something or another.
Yeah, that's feckless, smirking nincompoop. And I'm like, that's all the basic food.
He did have a funny voice too, that kind of a, you know, nasal type thing.
Yeah, he sounded like an old hatchet-faced guy, which he was.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could listen to that when the other dude took it over. I was like, goodbye.
Yeah.
But I think Pierce probably could put two and two together. Now, whether he knew something really was cooking, or if he had taken a look into Pandora's box, I don't know. I kind of think not. But remember, too, Larry, we said this before. There were thoughts in this country going on during World War II with those who wanted to begin a new country. And we said that's in the book Undercover by John Carlson. Mm-hmm. So who knows what was floating around here in the 40s.
Pierce was a leading light. He was a dedicated Nazi revolutionary. Hitler was his hero. He believed in the Third Reich, and he wanted to see a worldwide Reich. I mean, that was not only that, but Pierce was had developed his own sort of Gnostic style religion. You know, along the line, he was very much into the occult, and you know. He was a very powerful character. Not only that, but he had very powerful friends in Europe and especially in Germany, because the National Alliance and the German NPD, which is the new version of the Nazi Party in Germany, and it's getting stronger all the time. At any rate, Pierce had very close contact with those guys. When Pierce first started off, he was involved with Norman Lincoln Rockwell and the old goofy Nazi Party that
George. Don't say Norman. Oh no. You'll have every art lover, which they really don't call that art, but no, that was George. Can you imagine if Norman Rockwell drew Nazi stuff like the Four Freedoms? How the hell would that look on a Saturday?
Little Hitler Youth at the counter drugstore or something.
Yeah, right. Oh, what is that? What is that? A 45? Oh, there you go. I tell you that's a.
No, I'm not talking about Norman Rockwell. It was George Lincoln Rockwell.
That's okay.
The thing was, Pierce got really fed up with them early on because he thought of them as basically being a bunch of stupid clowns. He didn't see a lot of difference between them and the Klan, and he didn't want any part of that kind of low level redneck
Southern
knee jerk racism. He was wanting to put together a movement. He's a dedicated revolutionary, and a very bright guy. And the National Alliance is a pretty dangerous group, from what I understand. There are a lot of people in it that are similar to him, intelligent people who are professionals who, are dedicated to the cause.
Well, there's another one out there, a member of which used to email me, kind of regularly, and I forget what that group's called. And they got a pretty acerbic leader as well.
Yeah.
But at any rate, what I want to go back to is all I'm saying is this. I mean, and it goes back to was there a Pike Mazzini letter? If it was, they got it right. This is what we're headed for. Mm-hmm. The stuff we've done about the Vatican and Walter Veith and stuff. I do believe there's a script, and I think you believe that as well.
Yes. And I think they're wanting to see, once this Third World War takes place, and we've talked about that, and it's pretty much cemented as far as I'm concerned that that's going to happen. when that takes place and the chaos and confusion that's going to result in America when everything starts breaking down, these people see themselves as taking over because they're organized and they're very well gunned up, and they have people within the American military that are in their groups, And there's not just one of them; there's several, but they'll probably fight it out amongst themselves eventually. Who knows? But they see themselves as taking over, and I don't think that's all that far-fetched. I think it would be possible.
Well, it goes back to, not to beat a dead horse, but two things. One, and that's Kissinger's smarmy comment, and back at Rodney King riots, that there'll come a time when Americans will beg for martial law.
Right.
I think he knows exactly what he's talking about, just like Brzezinski does. They're not prescient. They know the deal, and every so often they crack a smile and let it out and wonder if anybody has heard it. The other thing is, I still am very chilled by that book, The Menaces Chronicles, written under a pseudonym that comes out of the Rosicrucian Order out in Pennsylvania, and looking at that scenario, saying our soldiers are gone, we have been invaded, and the only thing that stops it. Do you remember this at all, Larry?
Yeah, I remember you talking about it.
Okay. Yeah, and the only thing that stops it is that there is a geological cataclysm of such a import that all the invading armies want to go home and see if there's anything left of their countries. I'm telling you. And why? Because I think they're tuned into the evil one, and that makes sense to me. So America, people say, well, where can you go? And I would have to say you can't hide from what's coming, but certainly the United States is going to take it in the groin big time.
Well, I think eventually America is going to become, a province of sorts, an economic zone along with Canada and Mexico.
Oh, by the way, let me ask you something. I've been meaning to ask you that. I don't think I'm digressing really, but, I was watching the NASCO corridor. I was watching the website that those people put up in support and in, trying to do damage control. Mm-hmm. But we don't hear much about the NASCO corridor anymore, do we? And you're in Texas, where that was supposed to start, the first leg.
Yeah.
Is there anything going on out there at all? Or?
As I understand it, they're working on it, but it's way down in South Texas around the border, which is quite a distance from where I live. But it's, I know that there have been groups here in the state that are trying to stop it, and organizing meetings and so forth. And but I think eventually they're going to get that thing built. I don't know what stage it's in now. I'll do some research on it and find out if I can, where they stand with it. Well, but I mean, I-35 runs right through Austin, and I'm telling you, Biz, you talk about a congested. I mean, Houston or Los Angeles or Chicago doesn't have anything on I-35 in Austin anymore. I mean, it's a real mess. I mean, it's hard to get from north to south anymore.
I have to say one of the plums that Robert Burke pulled out, besides unveiling Chapman, with whom he was in contact with, and we don't go into that, but I mean, he called it right. Mm-hmm. The other thing he showed me was a news release from a Spanish construction group. I don't know if you remember this, called Grupo Ferrovial.
Right.
And while the NASCO corridor is saying, well, we're not building a new highway, a Grupo Ferrovial in this, construction like periodical, was bragging about, well, we're going to put in a new I-35.
Yeah.
And so you've got a Spanish construction group that was given the contract, who's saying exactly what they're doing, and then those chumps on the NASCO corridor website who were trying to defend it are saying, oh, no. So it is real. It seems not to have drawn the attention that it used to have in Patriot circles, but I don't know why some of these things fall on the back burner. I guess the attention span even in the Patriot community.
Something that made me very suspicious about 2 years ago maybe was our governor, our esteemed governor, Rick Goodhair Perry, was called in front of the Bilderbergers. And this was in the Dallas Morning News. So he couldn't lie his way out of it and say he didn't go. But he went in front of the Bilderbergers, and it was all kind of kept hush-hush, and then all of a sudden they broke the story. Nobody really knows what he talked to them about. But they said that he went and gave a speech on international law. Now, I don't know what Rick Perry knows about international law. You know, but what I'm thinking is it probably had something to do with the plans to amalgamate, the United States, Canada, and Mexico into an economic zone, and possibly it had something to do with the 35 corridor.
Where did he give the speech again?
He gave it in front of the Bilderbergers over in Europe, one of their meetings,
okay.
I believe in 2008 or 9.
Okay.
It was in the Dallas Morning News. You could probably find it. I think I may have sent something to you about it.
All right.
Quite a long time ago, but it was real odd to me that Rick Perry, who to me is just the consummate phony politician, but I never thought of him as any kind of expert on law. In fact, I don't even think he has a degree in law. So it was like, what I remember, I'll have to go check it out. What I remember of him was that, he's been involved with agriculture and that kind of thing, but that was, kind of his career path. I don't know what his degree's in. He went to A&M. But anyway.
Well, let me tell you what I find interesting also. This is probably a coincidence.
Yeah.
But it happened nonetheless. I don't think you were around the days when I obtained a video from the University of Texas Law School. Mm-hmm. And they had as a guest speaker Dr. Anne-Marie Slaughter, who was, she may still be, the head of the Woodrow Wilson School of Government in Princeton, New Jersey.
Right.
Well, she came out with a book at that time, flatly entitled "New World Order."
Wow.
We're not hiding this thing at all.
Yeah.
And she gives the speech, and she talked about what was being created as she spoke was international standards for law, regulatory, legislation, and judicial standards. So, and what happened was, even if you heard it, I'm telling you anyway. No, she was questioned afterwards. Raise your hand type of thing in the auditorium, and one guy got it, and he asked her 2 pointed questions, one and then a follow-up, and she was not comfortable.
Right.
And this is what she did, because I think internally she kind of panicked a little bit. And here's what she said about what he said is like, is this really a good idea? Doesn't that mean national sovereignty's lost? She goes, well, they're just in the talking stages. And you know, Larry, I'll say it, that is a bullshit throwaway line.
Oh my God!
Oh, and why?
It's okay. It's okay if we lose national sovereignty, but we're just talking about it now.
Right. So, that's all she could think about to throw a wet blanket on it, and it wasn't cool.
Oh my God!
And I just said, she wasn't ready for that. And whoever that guy was, and I tell you, it was funny because when the camera panned up, and he was a distance away. I mean, that's the way it looks on video.
Right.
He's kind of leaning to the side with his idea of like, man, you are so full of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So at any rate, and that also happened in Austin.
Right.
So,
right.
So there you go.
Austin and Texas in general, and Austin, we're right on the front lines of what's going down. I mean, they're bringing that sucker. I-35, I really believe, is going to be, an international corridor, and it's perfect because it runs all the way from the Mexican border up to the Canadian border, and it's going to go across, both of those countries too.
Yeah, it's probably going to.
And believe me, the traffic on that thing, because all the loosening of the laws, allowing the commerce, and those trucks coming up from Mexico, man. I mean, they don't have the same standards for safety that we have here in the United States.
Yeah, you only need 3 lug nuts on each wheel.
Right. And I mean, it gets really dangerous out there.
Well,
where it goes.
Again, though, they were relying on their site, but it's going to be a separate I-35. And what I think you got, Larry, pretty much, it's going to be, you guys want to go local, you take the old I-35 for the transportation of goods. Here's where it's at.
Oh yeah, they're working on it all the time, Biz, but they don't talk about it as far as the I-35 corridor. They kind of avoid talking about that. They're putting all kinds of flyovers and they're doing things. I'm going to have to look into that now. Okay. I'll report back to you on that. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I see all this huge construction. I stay off of 35 if at all possible. Fortunately, I don't have to take it going to work, but my friends, people are always complaining about it, about how bad the traffic is. And people leave their homes like, 2 or 3 hours early sometimes just to, avoid having to deal with the really bad traffic. But anyway.
Well, I tell you what, God help them when they get to Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah, God help anybody going to Oklahoma.
Yeah,
okay, I don't want any letters.
Yes, there you go. I missed
Just
the turn.
kidding.
What? No, I missed the turn when we were trying to leave. In that famous story about going to Texas with Pilot Peter and Cute Paul, and of course we all were loaded. And as we drove north, I missed the turn, and it's like here we are in Oklahoma, and I missed the turn.
Oh man.
Oh, I think it was Coffeyville, which is famous for other hoodlums, but anyway.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know. I want to ask you one other thing, and then we can get back to the long lost.
Yeah. Sorry about getting a digression here.
Yep. Well, who was a major contributor to that? Me. But here's what I wanted to ask you as well. There seemed to have been a very heavy connection between, how should I say this? World War I Germany, somehow, some way, and Islam. Mm-hmm. And then that seemed, at least on face, to not be the case, although I guess the trappings in certain elements were there. It didn't seem like it was as pronounced. I mean, obviously, Britain went to a long way to destroy the Ottomans down there. Mm-hmm. Also to tripartite, I guess it was Iraq at the time as well. And really just carve out some countries like Kuwait and Jordan and such. And yet there seems to have been this kind of like fealty between certain aspects of Islam and what would later be known as Nazis. But there was no military alliance, I don't believe, in World War II between them.
Not a formal one, but there was an alliance. Definitely in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt was basically a Nazi organization with an Islamic or Egyptian twist to it. And I'll get into that today, as a matter of fact. And even after the war, in the 1950s, many Nazis escaped into Egypt and were taken in by the government there. Nasser used quite a few Nazis as military advisors, etc.
When I went down to the pyramids, I always wondered what the deal was with those guys spelling Wiener Schnitzel down there. It didn't look like an Egyptian delicacy. But can you find anything, or did you come across anything, where Rommel got any kind of support from them, or
he got support from them from the standpoint of we're ready to help you, and whenever the time would be right, they had basically pledged themselves. The Muslim Brotherhood had pledged themselves to attack the British. One thing that's not probably known that much is that Nasser and Sadat both were Nazi agents. They were both working for the Third Reich and were spying on the British at the time, and that's how both of them came into prominence. They were both young military officers in the Egyptian army, and the Egyptian army was making plans to attack the British, kind of as a, well, I couldn't really call them a fifth column because it was their country, but
right.
But they were planning to start a revolution against the British and kill as many of them as they could, especially in Cairo, which was where the British headquarters was.
I just want to let you know, a little anecdote, which is really impressive for a lot of reasons, but the St. Petersburg Times came out with two big stories, and not that newspapers do that much anymore. That's why it was a little more impressive that it came out of the Times, which, unlike the Tampa Tribune, is not a complete 100% rag, but, it's getting closer. But there is a female reporter down there whose name escapes me right now, but she's the one that also found out that Tampa Airport lied about breaking the moratorium on 9/11 when they flew some of the Mideast royalty out of Miami.
Oh, yeah.
When
Osama bin Laden's family, nobody else could fly, but they could because they didn't want them to get hurt.
Well, yeah, and the thing
and they didn't even question them. The FBI did not question these people. Does that make any sense to you?
Given the way the game is rigged, yes. But you see, now you can lie so much about what's going on, and people knew that planes came into Tampa Airport. I mean, it's like flying an elephant overhead. You can't There's some things you can't hide.
Right.
And that woman from the St. Petersburg Time, good for her, called TIA out enough to the time when finally TIA admitted they did. But she is also the person who said, basically in print, bullshit to Daddy Bush's claims that Iraq was militarily building up on the Kuwaiti border. You remember that story?
Yeah.
She got access to a Russian bird that was looking down on the situation and said there is no build up there.
Yeah.
But she also stated that the precision of that image was so sharp that it also revealed she could see the tank tracks from Rommel's panzer divisions.
Right.
That's how crisp that was. I don't know if you ever heard that story, but I mean, I find that really impressive. And the other thing is this, and here we go again with, was Hitler crazy or was he handled? I mean, Rommel is kicking ass and taking names, and he calls them in. You remember that?
Well, part of what was going on there was that the British had broken the code, the Nazi code. They had the Enigma machine, and they'd broken the code, and they were able to just wipe out Rommel's supply lines. Plus, American tanks had started arriving, so it gave Montgomery something of an advantage there. And after a while, he started, kicking Rommel's butt. But he couldn't get supplies. If he had had supplies, I don't think Montgomery would have ever beaten him, because he was just Rommel. From everything I've ever read or heard, was just a brilliant tactician. He knew when to attack and how, and he had a great ability to assess his enemy and know where their weaknesses were, and he gave the British everything they could handle.
It almost reminds me of when Truman called in MacArthur, because
Right.
MacArthur didn't play by the playbook. He went in and kicked some booty, and he wasn't supposed to do that. Bang, you're gone. And that's what just reminded me of the relationship between Rommel and Hitler. And wasn't Rommel? Do you remember? Was Rommel in on the Valkyrie plot?
Well, he was accused of being in on it. He didn't know about it. The problem with Rommel was that he was one of those people who wanted to just remain an officer and stay out of politics altogether. He had learned to despise Hitler because he thought Hitler was leading the country down.
Well, he was.
Down the path to destruction. So what they did is they found out that his name was mentioned. They found his name, and they went to him, and two officers came to his house and told him, look, he was convalescing from an injury. He had been shot up by a British plane, and his Jeep had been, and he had gotten hurt. And they told him, you can either commit suicide, or we will have a trial and convict you and hang you, and we will kill your family. So Rommel took what he considered to be the
Roman way out.
Yeah, he went ahead and committed suicide. He drove off with these two guys, shot himself, and then to make add insult to injury, the Third Reich made this big funeral where he was the great hero and all that, and they covered up everything. But basically, he was forced to commit suicide.
So I'll always believe. I believe the story that we saw in The Longest Day, when the reason why the invasion was more successful is because Hitler didn't want to be awakened from his nap, or the soldier was. Look, that may be the story, but I'm not believing that. And if it is the story, if that's what they told people, it's because, again, here we have a rigged situation.
Well, look at Dunkirk. If Hitler said, "Oh yeah, we'll have Goering and his fighter bombers, his dive bombers will take care of the British Navy, and he'll bomb the guys on the beach, etc." Well, all he had to have done to really just wipe them out was to throw the Panzers against them. They had them ready to go, but they didn't use them. So that never made a lot of sense. There was a lot of things about the war that just didn't make sense, especially from Hitler's viewpoint.
Larry,
but
I
really don't know.
You start to wonder, though. Starting back at the Civil War, which is all right, was here. There's a little bit more information available, and it looks like there was a fighting not to win.
Yeah.
They call it blunders, but now I'm starting to think blunders are when the powers that be decide, this is not going the way we want it to, so do something stupid. And I mean, we see it with Napoleon. World War I guess there's cases I'm really not clear on it. But in World War II, I mean, some of the stuff that happened, it was like, what? And I mean, even in the end, Adolf, why are you sending the troops into Russia right about fall? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, is that a little nuts? Yes, it is. Yeah. And so, again, I thought for a second that Rommel was either too successful, and here's where I'm going with this as well. Think about what happened with Patton.
Right.
Patton, too successful, mind of his own, gets into a Jeep accident. No, he was killed. I mean, he was murdered.
Yeah, he had a tendency to run his mouth too much, and he was becoming an embarrassment to the people at the top, and he had to go. I mean, I see Patton as the kind of guy, he might have retired and started, telling everything he knew,
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's the kind of person he was. I wouldn't say he was fearless, but he was pretty close to it, and he just didn't give a damn. He would say what he thought, and unfortunately for him, he was just a little had too big a mouth, and I think they offed him.
He was. I mean, you heard that anecdote about the author Jimmy Bishop.
Yeah.
Who wrote the books The Day Lincoln Died, The Day Christ Was Crucified. He had that series.
Right.
And he was the uncle of a friend of mine who said, I can't understand. They said he was killed in a Jeep accident, but I saw him under guard in a hospital with MPs on the door, and he died there. Okay, fine. But it also reminds you, too, of characters like Patton and Custer, who had this hubris. We saw that a little bit in a fictional sense, in the movie Apocalypse Now with the Robert Duvall character, who was sitting there, gesticulating and talking about surfing when the bombs were coming in, and people were diving for cover, and he just stood there. And
it was the same guy who said there's nothing like the smell of napalm in the morning.
It's like victory. But the point was clear. I mean, there's a hubris. But the problem with Patton, Patton didn't get his guys killed. Custer did. So not a good move. But it's true, like they said in that movie. You knew he was going to get through this without a scratch on him. Yeah. And he just knew it, and he was trying.
Yeah, I don't know. You've probably seen the movie with George C. Scott playing Patton.
Yep.
And I thought that was one of the better movies I've ever seen about a military figure. It's really, really good.
And it's funny, you call him George Patton because he actually became that character in the end.
Well, he did. He was an amazing individual. Another great movie that he made that along the same lines was The Formula. I know I've probably talked about that before. And it's a fictional story about a detective whose friends are killed, and they're connected to the whole idea of the Nazi war machine when it was making synthetic gasoline, and how there was a formula that was needed to crank it up and do that again. They did make synthetic gasoline out of coal.
Did. And you're not going to believe it, but I was going there right now.
Okay.
Because one of the stories I read, and this is like 1973 gas crisis thing.
Right.
And I never thought about it, was that when Patton apparently was chasing the Nazis back, east, he was using gas from their own vehicles.
Right.
And it was synthetic gas. And it's like, does anybody, are you walking away with any kind of thought about this? There you go. Absolutely. The formula. Right. So.
Right. If you ever get a chance to see that movie, do, because it's fictional, but it really tells a lot about what's going on in the world today.
Just like Boys in Brazil, you'd have to say, right?
Yeah, it's fictional, but it's
telling you a lot.
It's not a lie,
Just like Godfather 3, which nobody seems to like.
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. Why is that? They like the other two. What was the element there? What was the group or the factor that?
I don't know. It couldn't be the priest.
Yeah, you just don't mess with the Vatican. People get upset. Well, there it goes.
It's not nice to fool with the Vatican.
Yeah.
All right, so there we are. And you said that this is leading us back into the Long Lost Four.
Yeah, I'm going to get back into the idea of the Vatican rat lines here.
Okay.
And I'll start off with a piece that was written by Carl Oglesby. It's the Secret Treaty of Fort Hunt. And he says, William Shire closed his 1960 masterpiece, the rise and fall of the Third Reich with the judgments that the Nazi regime had passed into history. But we cannot be so confident today. On the contrary, the evidence as of 1990 is that World War II did not end as Shire believed it did, that Nazism did not surrender unconditionally and disappear, that indeed it finessed a limited but crucial victory over the Allies, a victory no less significant for having been kept a secret from all but the few Americans who were directly involved. But Martin Bormann, who was even more powerful than Himmler, did not accept the premise of the separate peace idea. Bormann was an intimate of Hitler's, the deputy Fuhrer and the head of the Nazi Party, and thus superior to Himmler in rank. Bormann wielded additional power as Hitler's link to the industrial and financial cartels that ran the Nazi economy, and was particularly close to Hermann Schmitz, who was chief executive of IG Farben, the giant chemical firm that was Nazi Germany's greatest industrial power. With the support of Schmitz, Bormann rejected Himmler's separate peace strategy on the ground that it was far too optimistic. The Allied military advantage was too great, and Bormann believed for Roosevelt to be talked into a separate peace. Roosevelt, after all, had taken the lead in proclaiming the Allies' demand for Germany's unconditional surrender and total denazification. Bormann reasoned, rather, that the Nazis' best hope of surviving military defeat lay within their own resources, chief of which was the cohesion of tens of thousands of SS men for whom the prospect of surrender could offer only the gallows. Bormann and Schmitz developed a more aggressive, self-contained approach to the problem of the looming military defeat, the central concept of which was that large numbers of Nazis would have to leave Europe and, at least for a time, find places in the world in which to recover their strength. The international organization created to accommodate Bormann's plans is most often called the Odessa, a German acronym for Organization of Veterans of the SS. It has remained active as a shadowy presence since the war and may indeed constitute Nazism's most notable organizational achievement. But we must understand that none of Bormann or Skorzeny and Schacht's well-laid plans would have stood the least chance of success had it not been for a final component of their organization, one not usually associated with the Odessa at all, but very possibly the linchpin of the entire project. The final element of the Odessa was the so-called Gehlen organization, the organization, the Nazi system, intelligence system that sold itself to the U.S. at the end of the war. It was by far the most audacious, most critical, and most essential part of the entire Odessa undertaking. The literature on the Odessa and that on the Gehlen organization, however, are two different things. No writer in the field of Nazi studies has yet explicitly associated the two, despite the fact that General Reinhard Gehlen was tied politically as well as personally with Skorzeny and Schacht. Moreover, Gehlen's fabled post-war organization was in large part staffed by SS Nazis who were positively identified with the Odessa. Men such as the infamous Franz Alfred Six and Emil Augsburg of the Wannsee Institute. An even more compelling reason for associating Gehlen with the Odessa is that without his organization as a screen, the various Odessa projects would have been directly exposed to American intelligence. If the CIC, Counterintelligence Corps, and the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, had not been neutralized by the Gehlen ploy, the Odessa's Great Escape scheme would have been discovered and broken up. Gehlen cleared his operations with Admiral von Dönitz and General Franz Halder, his former chief of staff. This indicates that the German chain of command was still in place while Gehlen was going to work for the U.S. As Gehlen was about to leave for the United States, he left a message for Bonn, with another of his top aides, Gerhard Wessel. I am to tell you from Gehlen that he discussed with Dönitz and Halder the question of continuing his work with the Americans. Both were in agreement. Well, you can see right there that the plan to get the Nazis, the SS people, out of Europe was made quite some time before the end of the war, and that Martin Bormann and eventually Reinhard Gehlen were two of the prime movers as far as that went. I have something here to read from a book by Jim Marrs. I know you've had Jim Marrs on the show before.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Jim. He's probably not the greatest writer in the world, but a good one, I think. And he wrote a book about, I think, 3 or 4 years ago called The Rise of the Fourth Reich. And he has some commentary here I'd like to present. With Kennedy dead and Lyndon B. Johnson in the White House, the Nazification of the United States moved ahead largely unhindered. During the Johnson years, the president was surrounded by a coterie of advisors, collectively known as his wise men. All were members of the Council on Foreign Relations. These included John J. McCloy, Averell Harriman, Dean Rusk, William Bundy, Dean Acheson, George F. Kennan, and Robert A. Lovett. By the early 1960s, the Council on Foreign Relations, Morgan and Rockefeller interests, and the intelligence community were so extensively interbred as to be virtually a single entity, remarked Professor Donald Gibson. With young people, the media, and members of Congress fixated on the Vietnam War, few people were aware of the growing power and influence of the military and the immense war machine assembled behind it. Not that this war machine was designed to actually win battles. On the contrary, it was designed to suck tax dollars from the public treasury, centralize power in the government and its corporate sponsors, and to spread the new Reich's influence across the globe. Under the banner of freedom and democracy, yet pursuing the agenda of the globalists who supported the Nazis, the United States slowly turned from one of the most admired nations in the world to one of the most despised. William Blum, a former State Department employee turned author, stated, from 1945 to 2003, the United States attempted to overthrow more than 40 foreign governments and to crush more than 30 populist nationalist movements fighting against intolerable regimes. In the process, the United States bombed some 25 countries and caused the end of life for several million people and condemned many millions more to a life of agony and despair. And goes on later in this same chapter to talk about G. Gordon Liddy. In early 1974, while President Nixon was desperately trying to find a way out of impending impeachment, G. Gordon Liddy, ringleader of the break-in at the National Democratic Party headquarters, was preoccupied with Nazi imagery. Liddy had named the Watergate Plumbers after that vast, secretive organization that helped Nazis escape both Europe and justice after the war. Our organization had been directed to eliminate subversion of the secrets of the administration. So I created an acronym using the initial letters of the descriptive words. Odessa appealed to me because when I organize, I'm inclined to think in German terms. And the acronym was also used by a World War II German veterans organization belonged to by some acquaintances of mine. Wasn't that special? Liddy has some Nazi friends. Liddy wrote in his 1980 book, Will, the autobiography of G. Gordon Liddy. According to author Edward J. Epstein in 1971, Liddy invited a number of White House officials to view Nazi propaganda films to, quote, demonstrate how a few determined men could manipulate the emotions of an entire nation by invoking a few highly visual symbols of fear. These Nixon officials included John Ehrlichman, Eagle Crow, Don Santarelli, and Robert Mardian. The cycle of films was climaxed on June 13th by the showing of Triumph of the Will, a Nazi propaganda film made under the auspices of Hitler and Goering, which graphically depicted the way a national will could be inculcated into the masses through the agency of controlled fear and frenzied outrage, reported Epstein. Well, I've seen Triumph of the Will. It's a very famous film. Leni Riefenstahl, who was a documentary filmmaker and a very good one, was approached by Hitler and the higher-ups in the Third Reich to produce a propaganda film for them for their Nuremberg rally, I think in 1935 or 6. At any rate, it's a really chilling film, and how anybody would want to see that and be appreciative of that kind of shows you the mindset of people like G. Gordon Liddy and the rest of the Nixon White House there. Paul Manning also wrote, the German South American group also had direct access to the Nixon White House through their representatives in Washington and were proud of the fact that B.B. Rebozo was President Nixon's closest friend. for knowingly or unknowingly, Rebozo processed millions of their dollars through his Florida bank as part of normal commercial operations. So in other words, the old Nazis that were down in South America were definitely in contact with and had access to the White House through B.B. Rebozo and probably other people too, for that matter.
Well,
and Rebozo was laundering money for them in Miami.
Well, Rebozo was like Nixon's familiar spirit.
Yeah, sure
you,
was.
You remember that.
Yeah.
You also mentioned two names that I really think people should not let escape. And I dealt with this a long time ago, and I wanted to get back to it because something else was swinging when these characters held sway. One of them is George Kennan, whose protege is James Burnham. People should read about that because although they came on as Cold War warriors, pro-U.S., I think they actually created the whole Soviet thing. And in saying that, I'm wondering if they weren't also a little lefty themselves. For as whatever much that meant to the United States to move it again closer to socialism, as Russia is also moved a little bit the other way, supposedly, towards capitalism. I mean, we all understand we're going to the same system. Is that correct?
Well, the way I see it is we're going into the beast system, which will be collectivism, and you'll have a controlled economy. Well, when you get down to it, both Nazism and communism, both are controlled economies. They're totalitarian states, run by elites.
But so, Larry, it's quite the case, though, that ours was also controlled, a planned economy, though they called it something else.
Yeah, well, Roosevelt started that in the 1930s. I mean, I think you're familiar with Giovanni Gentile, who was the kind of the overall philosopher of fascism under Mussolini. Gentile was a professor, I believe, at the University of Palermo. He was an intellectual, and he came up with the basic ideas of both political and economic of fascism. And it was a controlled economy, and they took his ideas. They read his stuff. The people on Roosevelt's staff read his stuff and used some of his ideas, especially the idea of using tax dollars to make work, as in which they came up with all the WPA projects, et cetera.
Real quickly, because this should not be lost either. We had a professor at Fairleigh, get me back in New Jersey, time warp. No, St. Leo's. Woo! By the name of Lance Tillman. Yeah. And Lance didn't play nice with all the other professors. He was his own guy. He also was in Navy intelligence, so Lance knew the way the world worked.
Oh, yeah.
And academics don't like that because they want to believe it's the way they write it.
Well, naval intelligence is the first intelligence operation in America.
Thou shalt be no other intelligence operation.
Yeah.
But Lance just was a really vivacious guy, and he wanted to learn stuff, and we had him on twice. And he would also talk to Harry and I. And the one thing I lament so much, because I lost contact with him, knowing Lance, though, this is not surprising. I found out that he's off in Kazakhstan.
Uh-oh. Wonder what he's doing there.
He's a professor over there? No, well, he's supposed to be a professor.
Well, it's a tourist spot. I mean, a lot of people retire there.
I'm afraid Lance might get retired there.
Yeah. He might.
But dig this, and I don't know if you heard it or not, but I mean, Lance comes in one day, and I mean, he's a big man. He kind of looks like he looks like one of the Bridges. Was it Jeff Bridges that's out now doing that, that country western thing? He's that big. He has that presence. And Lance comes over and he calls Harry and I in the reference area, and he says to us, I've just been looking at something. I've just been playing around with this, but I'm starting to find some kind of chord here. And I was like, all right, what's going on? And he starts talking to us, and all I remember him saying is that from 1973 to the present, he said, for all intents and purposes, we've had a planned economy.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what's interesting about that, in the time that I was doing my schoolwork to get a second degree in English and to get certified to teach, I had to take some courses, and across them all, whether it was education or sociology or psychology, the year 1973 pops up in all of them. It keeps repeating. And these are not, this is not necessarily political writings. And They were saying that in 1973, is the time when the rising of, let's say, the income of the upper crust no longer raised the lower boats with it. It was a time when there was a clear dichotomy that the rich were getting much richer. We know that, we understand that saying, but now it really was a great difference. Another sociological book comes in and says in 1973 began a time of what Durkheim called anomie, A-N-O-M-I-E, rootlessness. And there was a rootlessness and there was a transigence that started to settle in to America.
Right.
73 was also when we kicked the gold standard completely to the curb, I believe. I mean,
I think that was 73 with Nixon.
Yeah, I mean, they told everybody you're not going to get your money in gold, and that's the way it goes.
Right.
And there again, you look at an event almost like 1932 or so, with the Banking Act of 33, where it's like, okay, well, you stupid Americans who are really patriotic and love us, bring your gold and silver in, assholes. It's the last money you'll ever see. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they did it. We understand that. And then what did they get for the rest of their lives? Promissory notes known as Federal Reserve notes.
Yeah.
So 73, I mean, Larry, it's incredible because...
It's a pivotal year.
Yes, it is. And it's the one that makes the least noise almost.
Right.
And also,
I think you're right. Like there are certain pivotal years in history, and especially history of the United States. Like 1932 was a pivotal year. 1945 and I think 1973 as well. And there's probably others I haven't thought of. But.
And remember, they kicked us in the groin at the end of 73 into 74 with the first manufactured gas crisis.
Right.
Right. And folks, really, I mean, Harry said this to me a long time ago, and I agree. They want $7 out of us, and the reason why that 7 is a golden number, $7 per gallon gas, is because that puts us basically in line with Europe and other countries. Mm-hmm. That's what they want us to pay. What that's going to do to an economy that's already going down the toilet, you hear that flushing sound, we are screwed for this coming year or two. All right, so anyway, I wanted to mention that. The other thing I want to get to real quick, and we're going to break here as we're coming up to an hour. Here's what I'm wondering about. I'll give this much to John Coleman, who I want to trust, but again, a lot of it's anecdotal. But I can believe that Haig and Kissinger worked on Nixon to destabilize him over that botched robbery. Mm-hmm. Haig also and Kissinger were around to tell the world when Reagan was shot that it was no conspiracy.
Right.
Okay.
And Haig happens to have been a Knight of Malta.
Say it isn't so, Larry. Say it isn't so.
It's true.
But here's what's interesting, I think. Liddy, and I'll tell you what, I respect Liddy. I mean, if I had to get into an alley fight, I'd want Liddy with me. Mm-hmm. That guy had a lot going for him, and I will tell you also...
He's a mean SOB, that's for sure.
And he was, I think his training was Jesuitical, but Liddy went to jail, and so did some other guys. And I'm wondering if there wasn't this little fist fight going on under Nixon's regime that would continue through Reagan's and Daddy Bush's, where the Eastern establishment was kind of getting moved out of the way, that, quote, Eastern establishment, which would have been Kissinger and Haig. Kissinger, I think, was probably the one that, what would you say, military minds had the least respect for, because, I mean, you know, what is he here for anyway? You know what I mean? I mean, what is your claim to fame? But those two guys... If they
he's Rockefeller's main man. I mean, he's one of Rockefeller's main men, I'll put it that way.
So they destabilized Nixon, but Liddy and another bunch of guys are willing to swing for it. Colson, Magruder, I think, went also.
Yeah.
Dean. All right, so they went to Club Fed, but still in all, they went ahead and did it. And I'm wondering if that showed some kind of split that would continue through the GOP. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, they all
maybe.
Well, I
mean, your comment about the Eastern establishment and the Sunbelt guys. The author that I was talking about earlier, Carl Oglesby, he wrote a book called The Yankee and Cowboy War, where he was saying that there was a big the elites in this country are split along the lines of the Eastern establishment and the Sun Belt, and well, California, Texas, the southern states versus the Eastern establishment.
And when you think about this, it's almost as if a transition took place under Daddy Bush. Why? because Daddy Bush was Eastern Establishment / Nazi. Mm-hmm. But he also was a chameleon that I actually made fun of before I ever knew anything was really going on. It's like, okay, what state do you come from, man? Are you from Texas or are you from Maine? What is it?
Actually, he's from Connecticut. We don't claim him here in Texas. At least I don't.
No, but he dropped his eggs. He dropped his eggs there.
Yeah, I know.
Which became Jeb.
Well, actually, Shrub was born in Connecticut.
Shrub was,
and I'm proud of that.
Yeah, right. A true Connecticut Yankee.
I have no idea where the rest of them were born.
But they went to school down by you.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So, but you see what's happening here? It's almost if there's an amalgamation now.
Oh, yeah.
And a softening of the lines, or at least the showing to the curb of Haig and Kissinger. And now you have the Eastern Establishment, but under like this Nazi umbrella that's now embraced the center of this country, which, I mean, what is Jeb and George associated with? Texas. Although Jeb came down here to Florida. Explain that to me as well.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, they go down. I mean, they had there's a populous state in the South. Oh, I think we'll go there so we can become governor of that state. So we'll have the two most populous states in the South and Southwest.
Yeah, and too that also saw a time, and I'm not blaming this on anybody, but clearly. At some point, I assume the 80s, it was a weakening. In the 90s, it was probably close to moribund, and there was no more Dixiecrat bloc in the Southeast. That was done. And Florida was one of those states where it happened. So, all right, listen, we're going to bring it to a pause here at an hour, and we'll pick it up round two.
All right, we're going to talk about the Vatican rat lines and involved with Odessa. And it's important that we talk about the Knights of Malta, which is really the organization which is most closely associated from the Roman Catholic Church's point of view with the rat lines. And kind of give a little rundown. I know we've talked about them some in the series already, but this is from an article by Constantine, Shattering the Myths, and he's talking about the Knights of Malta, and he says, the order has been proven to be linked with the rat run, the post-World War II escape route used by high-ranking Nazis and death camp scientists from defeated Germany to the Americas. Sovereign Knight of Malta passports were issued with false identities, which allowed escape from prosecution for war crimes. Perversely, after the war, the order's highest decoration, the Grand Cross of Merit, was awarded to General Reinhard Gehlen, Hitler's head of intelligence. The Brotherhood's strong Catholic roots made the modern Knights fervently anti-communist. The order has been largely responsible for the construction of the CIA and many of its global covert operations. The founding fathers of the CIA, William Wild Bill Donovan and Alan Dulles, were Knights, as were most other heads of the CIA, including Ronald Reagan's director, William Casey. Casey gave Pope John Paul II unprecedented access to CIA intelligence, including spy satellites and agents. The Knights of Malta's key spheres of influence are Africa and Latin America, and include many dictators such as mass murderer General Pinochet in their ranks. Membership in Latin America includes Masonic P2 fascists and many surviving Nazi players who were directly responsible for the formation of the modern neo-Nazi movement. Knight and Nazi escapee Otto Scarface Skorzeny, who had led a commando raid on the Cathar region of France in search of occult artifacts, including a Holy Grail, played a major role in the Vatican's rat run. I think in the next episode we'll talk about Skorzeny in detail. Goes on to say, conveniently for Nazi members who did not escape, Knight William Donovan served as chief aide to the American prosecutor at the post-war Nuremberg trials after handing over the reins of the OSS CIA to fellow Knight Alan Dulles. So that's pretty convenient for the Nazis to have William Donovan as the chief aide to the chief prosecutor at Nuremberg, which means that they got a much better deal than they might have gotten otherwise.
Let me ask you, did you ever come across any information that some of the, I don't know, I'm going to call them legitimate prosecutors in the United States, I mean, I keep thinking back to that movie, with Spencer Tracy.
Right. Not
knowing how much of that was propaganda. But did you ever come across anything where any of the prosecutors were kind of like, what's going on here?
I haven't, I really don't have any great details on that. But I know that the British, that one of the British prosecutors apparently was a little upset at the way things went, and he didn't think that things were being done fairly, and that the Nazis were getting off easy. And I think that because he was one of those guys who wasn't in on the circle, you know, he wasn't in the in crowd. And I think there's also was an American prosecutor. I'll look into that. Yeah, that's interesting.
But aren't we agreed? Didn't you I also speak about this? You're the one that mentioned it, and I said absolutely. That took a look at the behavior during the trials of which was it? Was it Hess?
Yeah, Hess. What about Hess?
Well, wasn't it Hess who seemed a little bit affable and cocky, like nothing's going to happen to me?
No, Goering.
It was Goering. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Goering more or less took over the procedure. He was taking things over. I mean, he was a very dynamic personality. That's how he got to be where he was. And he was kind of turning things around on the Allied prosecution. And then they brought in some films showing the concentration camps, and that started to break him down, and they really went for the throat there.
All right, Hess was being sat on in Great Britain. Is that correct?
Well, no, he was at the trials.
Wait a minute, okay.
Nobody was sure if he was really lucid or not. He seemed to be completely mentally ill, but nobody's really sure about that period.
All right, wait a minute. Hess is the one that went over to England, right?
Yeah, he went over to England to try to supposedly to try to negotiate a separate peace with the British.
And they sat on him in Spandau, didn't they, for quite some time? All right.
Yeah.
Is he the gentleman with the dark hair, of decent stature? Kind of almost like like a coal pile beard or something like that, rough stubble, 5 o'clock shadow type of guy?
Yeah, I think that would describe him pretty well.
All right, no, I think it was he that was yucking it up in the box with the other guys.
No, actually it was Goering.
It was Goering. Oh.
Yeah, Goering.
Right.
Goering,
Okay.
Goering had lost quite a bit of weight, so he didn't look like they had forced him to lose weight. They wouldn't allow him to, eat a large amount. They also took the drugs away from him. He was a heavy drug addict, including, I think, morphine and maybe even heroin. I'm not sure if he had heroin, but he was a morphine addict, and he also was on some kind of downer pills. But once that he had been in prison for a while before the trial, they had forced him to go on a diet, and they had kind of cleaned him up, and he kind of came out of his shell and really started kind of taking over the proceedings.
Okay.
And he kind of rode herd on the rest of the guys in the group, and wouldn't allow them to break down. But it was Goering. Hess kind of sat there like he was out of it. I mean, he was just like,
That's what happens when you have a lobotomy.
Yeah.
But don't you wonder that?
Winston Churchill went in there one day with a surgeon.
Right.
Who knows?
But don't you wonder sometimes too, if Hess was legitimate and realized this whole thing is like crazy and rigged, and actually went over and tried to talk sense, and it was like, I mean, that's a take I have. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't think that guy would.
I think maybe Hess got the idea that it was a failed experiment, and it wasn't going to work out. And he thought, well, we have friends over in Britain. I'll go talk to them, and we'll arrange a separate peace, and then we'll just go after the Russians,
And then he finds out
that may have been what happened. I'm not sure,
But that's a good point. I mean, what happens if he goes over with good intentions and realizes that the deal is rigged, that the Brits are in on it too, along with the Germans, and guess what? This is going to happen. Sorry, Hess, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Good point. All right. Thank you.
No problem. Prior to working for the OSS, he headed, we were talking about Alan Dulles, he headed the OSS station in Switzerland during the war. Alan Dulles and his law partner, John Foster, his brother, had served as business managers and lawyers to John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil. They personally brokered the partnership between Standard Oil and IG Farben Chemical Corporation. IG Farben not only produced gasoline for the Nazi war machine, it manufactured Zyklon B. I might mention that they manufactured gasoline from coal. They invented the process, and there was a Standard Oil and IG Farben agreement in the 1920s where they basically became the same corporation. It manufactured Zyklon B, used slave labor before and during the war, including their huge petrochemical factory adjacent to Auschwitz death camp. They owned Bayer Pharmaceuticals, which, according to a current lawsuit, was directly involved in Dr. Joseph Mengele's horrific Auschwitz experiments and was spared from Allied bombings due to his Rockefeller interest. This is kind of the catch-22 thing. Leading wartime journalist George Seldes attempted to reveal this unholy alliance through his newspaper articles, but was rarely published at the time, and efforts were made to kill him. Joseph Heller's satirical novel Catch-22 made light of the insanity with his "We agreed to bomb our own bases in return for the Nazis buying our chocolate-covered cotton."
There you go.
I always liked that one. Anyway, as the Cold War intensified, Knight of Malta Joseph H. Redinger, acting on behalf of the Vatican and the Priory of Sion, forged ties with the European Council of Princes, which is the respectable name for the Dragon Court. That's another story. The CIA and Britain's MI6 to create the New World Order think tank, the Bilderberg Group, of which Henry Kissinger is a permanent member. His first chairman was Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, who held that position for the next 22 years, until a financial scandal forced him to resign. His daughter, Queen Beatrix, attended the year 2000 meeting, as did ample other European aristocratic players. The undemocratic Bilderberg Group continues to play a major part in international affairs and remains closed to public scrutiny and participation. I might also add that Prince Bernhard was a member of the SS, an honorary member of the SS himself. Documents show that New York's Cardinal Francis Spellman was directly involved in the right-wing military coup of Guatemala, which led to the murder of thousands and of which the CIA has acknowledged complicity. He has also been linked to neo-Nazi group P2 and the Mafia by his involvement with P2 member Archbishop Paul Marcinkus of Chicago, former head of the Vatican Bank, who was under suspicion by Italian authorities for the untimely death of Pope John Paul I. And we go back to the deal with the Godfather 3 there.
Yeah, which goes through this, yeah.
Yeah. Cardinal Spellman was not only an old friend of CIA creator Wild Bill Donovan, who previously had a law firm in New York, but was the actual head of the American Knights of Malta through the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and was responsible for vast sums of money raised from its members who have to pay thousands annually to remain in the order. The Sovereign Military Order of Malta is directly allied with the International Freemasonry, from where they recruit their new elite brethren. Hence, the Knights of Malta and the Knights Templar are the Rosicrucian upper degrees of Freemasonry. Now, that's speculation, that's an opinion, but I think it could very well be the case. Ironically, in recent years, a belief in the Catholic faith has not been an essential prerequisite for potential members who have the right connections. Non-aristocratic parties can now be initiated by the magistral grace of the Grand Master, although not in Britain, Germany, and other European countries with a strong tradition of nobility. However, this has allowed many Americans to join, and an order of merit is bestowed upon those who have outstandingly served the Knights or their works. Past Presidents Ronald Reagan and George Bush are such honorary initiates. That's George Bush the first. And Reagan was the toast of an extravagant dinner held by the order in 1989. With more than 11,000 knights worldwide, the Grand Master and Sovereign Council remain based in Rome. Their goal of political feudalism is clearly seen in the actions of Prince Hans Adam II, the Habsburg ruling monarch of Liechtenstein and a prominent Knight of Malta and a member of the Vatican's Opus Dei, who in October 1999 was reprimanded by the European Court of Human Rights for claiming he had final constitutional authority over his country's Supreme Court. The insignia of the Knights of Malta is the unusual Cross of Malta. That was the original emblem of the Knights Templar before being forced to adopt the Latin cross following the Inquisition.
And then it winds up as the Klan's cross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Occult initiates discovered that the Cross of Malta is a cryptogram for the goat of Mendes, the occult idol Baphomet, as is the inverted pentagram or five-pointed star that represents the goat's beards and horn. This is a symbol of ruling matter and spirit by the will and the controlled magical direction of sexual energies. Past Grand Masters of the Knights of Malta include Manuel de Fonseca, are known to have been initiates of the Templar tradition, and according to the Dragon Court's current sovereign Grand Master, Prince Nicholas de Ver von Drakenberg, who is a direct descendant of the originator of the Knights Templar, Godefroy de Bouillon, the Templars were a, quote, satanic order whose rituals included infanticide, sodomy, and witchcraft. Well, I hope that's not going on at the local lodge down the street. But sorry to make light of that. That's pretty scary.
I
but
know it is. Yes.
It kind of gives you an idea of what was going on with the Vatican rat lines. And having said all that, I'll go back to one of my tried and true sources here, John Loftus, Mark Ahrens, in their book Unholy Trinity. Those who did rescue the mass murderers from the hands of justice were not Perón, the Argentine dictator, and his secret police, but the Roman Catholic Church and its emissaries. It was the Roman Catholic Church which, through its priests, churches, monasteries, and forged Vatican passports, managed to foil the post-war hunt for Nazi war criminals. Nor was the Church's rescue operation inconsistent with the policy it had pursued throughout the Nazi era. Henry du Lubac, a Jesuit theologian, filed a report in 1944, well before the end of the war, on the collaboration of the Roman Catholic Church with the pro-Nazi Vichy French government. Hidden until this month, the report condemns that du Lubac calls the moral and spiritual abdication of Roman Catholic bishops under the Nazis. For decades, French cardinals, monks, and nuns had helped one of France's worst war criminals, Paul Touvier, escape justice. It is difficult to imagine that it was possible in the monolithic Roman Catholic Church for so many to act so uniformly for so long without the knowledge and approval of the highest levels of the Vatican. Israelis have found it difficult to understand why the Vatican has refused to recognize the State of Israel. Adolf Eichmann, in February, Adolf Eichmann was issued a Vatican visa and passport in the name of Riccardo Clement, dated 14 July 1950, by Franciscan monks in a Catholic monastery in Italy, giving him free passage to Argentina. Now, I saw that statement backed up by a documentary that I saw on the History Channel recently, where they were tracking the steps of Eichmann and several other war criminals, and Bormann for that matter. And they went to, I believe it was Genoa, Italy, and they showed the church where the priest had presided, who had fixed the passport for him. And they tried to, the guy was Yuki Goni, who is an Argentine anti-Nazi, who's done a lot of research and tried to, chase the trail of some of these Nazi war criminals. And he pointed out how he had been kind of stymied at every turn trying to get more information on how this passport was issued. And it just kind of, at the end, he was saying, well, this just shows you what's going on and how these things are hidden and how they are shut down whenever you try to investigate. And I will now go to Peter Lebenda's Unholy Alliance and talk about the rat lines there. And in particular, probably most prominent, or one of the two most prominent men in the rat lines, was Bishop Alois Hudal. He starts off talking about the attitude of the Catholic Church toward the Nazis, but there were those Catholic officials who found themselves in secret agreement with much of the Nazi platform, particularly where the potential threat of Russian communism was concerned. Pope Pius XII, for example, was notoriously silent regarding the fate of the Jews and was eager to avoid any confrontation with the Nazis. He jumped to praise the Fuhrer, however, when the latter moved against godless communists in the East. Like many of his contemporaries, he figured the Allies were shooting in the wrong direction. It was this attitude that directly or indirectly permitted many war criminals who committed ghastly crimes against humanity to escape forever the long reach of the Nuremberg Tribunal, and even in some cases to find themselves working in official capacities for the Allied intelligence services in their co-war against the Soviet Union. It would be Bishop Alois Hudal who would carry the fascist flag for the Vatican. Born in Austria on May 31st, 1885, he was ordained a Catholic priest in 1908. The parallels between his career and that of Lance von Liebenfels are striking. In the first place, both were Austrians born within 11 years of each other. Von Liebenfels was born on July 19, 1874 in Vienna, both entering the Catholic priesthood, with von Liebenfels entering the Cistercian novitiate in July of 1893 and taking his vows in September 1897, 11 years before Alois Udall. And I might add that we saw that Liebenfels was thrown out of the Cistercian order for sexual activities, and you can figure out what those would be, since it's an all-male activity there. Father Alois Udall himself became something of an Armanist and fellow traveler, just as von Liebenfels became the head of his own order of knights, the Order of the New Templars. Udall became Procurator General of the Order of German Knights, which is a Catholic institution. On May 1st, 1933, in honor of the pagan holiday approved by the Nazis and known as Walpurgis, or Beltane to the Celts, celebrated with the famous Witches' Sabbath at midnight, Father, now Bishop Udall, presided over a meeting in Rome, attended by over 700 members of the German expatriate colony there, including many church officials, Nazis and Nazi leaders such as local SA and Hitler Youth officials. On that occasion, he made a fiery speech defending the Nazi Party and its program in a blend of Catholic and Teutonic slogans, ending with the battle cry of Arminius, the hero of the Pan-Germans and Aryan mystics, in the Teutoburg forest. German unity is my strength is German might. It was Arminius who was the inspiration for Guido von List, Arminianschaft, the cult that List formed to worship Wotan and to instigate a return to the old pagan ways of the ancient Teutons. For Alois Udall to invoke Arminius at this gathering in Rome was tantamount to aligning himself with the neo-pagan, pan-German Völkisch movement represented by List, Liebenfels, and Rudi Sabartendorf. He didn't say Rudy, but I did.
I guess you did. To us, he's Rudy.
This strange little man then went on to publish The Foundations of National Socialism, in which he outlined and defended the Nazi Party programs, including the exclusion of Jews in no uncertain terms. Soon his efforts in combating Marxism, a legacy of his friendship with the future Pope Pius XII, Eugenio Pacelli, which dated from 1924, became widely known as the Action Udall in Nazi circles. Well, let's see. Archbishop Ivan Buchko of the Ukraine, who managed the incredible escape of the entire Ukrainian Waffen-SS division of 11,000 men plus their families to North and South America and Australia. Monsignor Kronislav Draganovic, who helped the Croatian fascists escape justice, many to Argentina, and lay Catholic Gustav Selmans of the Nazi Latvian organization Perkenkrust and leader of the Latvian SS, who became an important member of the notoriously anti-communist Intermarium Society of the Roman Catholic Church, which in addition to helping Nazi war criminals escape justice, also served as an arm of German intelligence. Udall was greatly admired in Nazi circles, and every effort was made to cooperate with his underground network of spies and collaborators, even as official Nazi policy remained stridently anti-clerical. Well, they remained anti-clerical in secret, but they were working hand-in-hand with the Roman Catholic Church, and it's just pointed out over and over again. There's tons of, documentation to that effect. Intermarium itself is interesting, not least because of its goals. One of its goals was the establishment of a new Holy Roman Empire of Eastern European nations encircling the atheistic Soviet Union. Intermarium developed a close working relationship with Alfred Rosenberg, who was not only a Nazi's chief pagan ideologue, but also a Baltic native who was tremendously sympathetic to anti-Soviet causes of any kind. After the war, many Intermarium notables became involved with the CIA and other Western intelligence services. Well, that's a real surprise. On Intermarium agenda was the formation of an exile army of anti-communists, many of whom would be former Nazis, to defend Europe's borders against the Soviet Union, and eventually to partition the USSR into small, separate ethnic enclaves, a la the Alfred Rosenberg and Heinrich Himmler plans. Well, I think they pulled that one off. they managed to break the Soviet Union down into small, separate ethnic enclaves and separate states. This involved dividing and conquering the Soviet state and thus eradicating the, quote, cancer of communism, while ensuring that the Russians would never again consolidate their power and threaten the world. Intermarium, like Udall's Caritas Internationalis, was to provide escape routes and rat lines for fleeing Nazis for many years, supplying the necessary passports and travel documents as well as steamship fares to ports all over the world. One wonders how today's Roman Catholics would feel about their Sunday donations, widows' mites, Peter's pence, and other charitable contributions being used to help finance the survival of Heinrich Himmler's Black Order. Some of the beneficiaries of Udall's operation, which was being run by Cardinal Montini, the future Pope Paul VI, in his capacity as Vatican Secretary of State, include Heinrich Müller, the Gestapo chief who once debriefed astrologer William Wolff, Walter Rauff, who was in charge of the mobile gas vans in which thousands of Jews were murdered, and alleges Farrago and many other European officials, Hitler's second in command, Martin Bormann himself. Muller disappeared at war's end and followed the rat line to Argentina along with Eichmann, Mengele, and so many others, comforted in exile with a suitcase full of American dollars. Ralph turned up in Chile. Bormann, according to Farrago, did them all one better and arrived in Buenos Aires dressed as a Catholic priest, a Jesuit. And what must be one of the most sickening scenes to any believing Catholic is that Bormann, as Father Augustine, celebrating Mass at the Cathedral of San Juan de Dios in La Paz, Bolivia, where he escaped when Argentina became too hot. Klaus Barbie would find a safe house with another Nazi priest living in Bolivia, in this case a Croat war criminal. We've talked about that before. He also, this is Bormann, he also performed weddings, baptisms, and other sacraments while serving in the role of auxiliary priest. This, of course, is the ultimate blasphemy. The most wanted war criminal in the world, a devoted Nazi since the 1920s, special assistant to pagan mystic Rudolf Hess, and third in line for leadership of the Reich after Hitler goring a man whose womanizing was excused by his wife because by fathering children out of wedlock, he was only doing his sacred duty to the fatherland. This man, with the blood of millions on his hands, celebrating Mass and dispensing Holy Communion to the faithful in the fiercely Catholic country of Bolivia. Well, I don't know what to say after that. Except
what a network.
Yeah. I guess we should point out on this day the celebration of Ishtar, the Babylonian goddess of fertility, which the Roman Catholic Church has instituted as a celebration of the resurrection of Christ, a little counterfeit celebration, just like Christmas. You know, I'm reading this by Lavinda, but it doesn't surprise me that the Roman Catholic Church allowed these things to happen.
Well, I want to ask you, too, I'm not trying to save myself from getting all kinds of brickbats thrown at me. But, you know, see, here's where I have the problem. Is it the church? What do we mean by the church? Because to me, the Vatican is secular. I know that they have this, you know, the show big. I understand. Oh, the Vatican. What are you talking about? Well, it's a nation state. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, that's true.
And since, if you would say the Jesuitical takeover in the 1820s, they were a tough bunch of people to begin with, going back to like 1000 A.D. But they needed some help, and it was provided by the Jesuits. And from that time, they've done pretty well for themselves. However, as much as see, I don't think the laity knows what's going on, but the clergy in some places, especially the high-level ones, like for instance, it's because it's the first time I heard it, but it's true that they called Vietnam Spelly's War, Spellman's War. Spellman was a heavy-duty shaker and mover.
Yeah.
I don't know that the likes of him have come that way again, but usually whatever cardinal presides in St. Patrick's is the one that's the chief of all the network in the United States. So I don't know. You see, I shy away from saying the church in a sense, only because I don't think the laity knows what's going on.
Yeah, well, it may be unfair. It's not really intended to be unfair, but it may be unfair to say the Roman Catholic Church, if we include the Roman Catholic Church to mean, the majority of the believers, the people that show up on the pews on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, I mean, they may.
And no, I don't think those people are in any form, involved with the type of things we're talking about. We should say the Vatican. And even at that, I don't think everybody in the Vatican was, that is included in the Vatican was involved in these things either.
No, but I'll say this. I mean, Roman Catholic believers would not be happy hearing this, and they would defend the Vatican and all that other. I understand that.
Yeah, I don't doubt they would, but I don't see how they can. I really don't.
But they don't know. They don't know this stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, there's so much evidence. There's so many people have done research on it. Some of these things are just. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the Roman Catholic Church, or let's say the Vatican again, was involved with bringing fascism and Nazism into power with the Lateran Treaty and the Concordat in the 1920s and 30s.
Hey, listen, they had their shadow cast over the United States in the Civil War.
Yeah.
Right, and Cardinal Antonelli, I had asked Wilcox once about Cardinal Antonelli. I said, was he here? He said, no, he was in the Vatican, but he was looked at perhaps as being, you can almost say, like the Vatican's man in the United States.
Right.
And that's when Charles went back into that chroniclingamerica.loc.gov site, and you can find articles in major dailies in the United States that will tell you of this problem that has been completely sanitized from our history books.
Right.
It's the reason why did John Surratt, who escaped a prosecution for the assassination of Lincoln, wind up in the Vatican Guard? I mean, It gets a little weird.
Well, I'll tell you one very brave journalist, and it crushed his career.
Seldes?
It was Seldes.
Yes.
George Seldes tried, even way back in the days, even before the Spanish Civil War, but especially in the Spanish Civil War, he tried to point out how the Roman Catholic Church was the driving force behind bringing Mussolini and Hitler's troops into Spain to support Franco and their rebellion against what had been a legally elected government. But the problem was that the Republic, the anarchists, the socialists, and especially the communists, it was kind of a mixture of different people or different groups on the left. The problem with them was that there was a group of them, I think probably the communists, maybe the anarchists too, had gone around and persecuted the Roman Catholic Church once they took over, sort of a revenge factor, because the Roman Catholic Church and the priest had been so in bed, not literally, hopefully, but they were in bed with the aristocracy there in Spain, and they saw them as being part of the oppression of the upper class, and quite a few of them were killed.
Yeah.
And so the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, gosh, I keep saying it. Sorry.
No,
the Vatican got really upset, obviously, and did everything they could to arrange a situation where Mussolini and Hitler's troops were brought in to put an end to the Spanish Republic. And it was basically what Seldes called it, a dress rehearsal for World War II.
Yeah.
And he kept trying to tell the American public that they weren't getting the truth about it, that the Vatican was setting the whole thing up.
I don't want you to be self-conscious about that in a sense. I mean, if you feel it's justified, okay.
Yeah.
If not, because, I had Darryl, what's-his-face on. Oh, I can't remember. And he went back and forth. I'm like, look, you're not doing that. And I mean that. But, It made me acutely aware of, like, okay, what do you want to talk about? If you want to talk about Roman Catholic beliefs, okay, we can do that. I'm not cool with them. Neither am I cool with a lot of Protestant ones. Or are we looking at the political...
Well, I just don't want people to think that I'm some kind of Catholic basher, hate Catholics. I don't. I'm just not like that. And and I realized that the majority, it's just like the people in the Masons, in Freemasonry. The majority of the Freemasons are just guys who are trying to further their careers and have friendship with people in the business community, et cetera.
It's cheap beer, too.
Yeah, yeah. But they're not involved with,
no,
any kind of weirdness at the top.
No. And I got sensitive to this only because, I mean, it's got nothing to do with my uncle, who's a third degree, never got out of the Blue Lodge. It doesn't have anything to do with that. But the occult symbolism that has found its way into some of the higher degrees of Freemasonry is not begotten. It was not created by the Freemasons. This goes back millennia.
Egypt and Babylon.
So, I mean, don't say it's Masonic. I say it's a cult. That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
And I think, Liam had made the point once upon a time. And that's when I started getting suspicion. No, I'm coughing. You gave it to me.
Contagion over the phone.
There you go. What else? Put your hands on the mic. No.
Feel the power.
Say yes.
That's not the power. You're standing in a bucket of water.
That is true.
Anyway.
I keep thinking of Robin Williams, and I'm thinking about his line that he said about, I guess, some evangelist, but I think of Trump now who's going to run for office, or he's popping off, right? And I keep thinking of Robin Williams going, "What's that raccoon on your head?" Yeah, I mean, come on, Donald, you can't run for office with that thing. I'd like to see Sarah Palin come up behind him and give him a fetch upside the head, banging all the hair. It's one of those things. It's like if he sneezes, he'll flog himself because it's all in the front. I'm horrible. This is terrible. You don't have to listen to this, folks. You can leave right now.
Oh man.
Yeah, where we were going with this, I don't know.
Well, we were just talking about the difference between talking about the Roman Catholic Church and talking about the Vatican.
I'm not cool with their religious tenets. That's another whole story. That's another whole show, and that's fine. But when you take a look at it, honestly, like you said today, how many times do Christians really care about going to church? Usually, if they want to keep some nominal presence, they go Christmas, they go Easter. One of the things that we never asked, I didn't even ask a couple of years ago. It's like, well, let me get something straight. You have a birth date and a death date. They don't float. They happen on certain dates. And Easter, which we celebrate the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, is all over the joint. And it's like, how can that be? He died on a day. He was resurrected 3 days later. That happened and didn't float between March, 21st or 17th, whatever it is. Oh, that's St. Patty's Day. And then goes over to as late as now. And I'll be honest with you, I'm trying to think hard about when I ever saw Easter this late. I guess it was. But, man.
I felt the same way. And somebody tried to explain to me how they determine what day Easter is each year. And that was many years ago, and I don't remember how it works. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No, it's got something to do with the vernal equinox. And
it's all about the fertility rites, and it was just the Roman Catholic Church, which is led by the Vatican.
But it was Constantine that did it.
Yeah, they decided to incorporate that into their state version of Christianity. It was a festival that the people knew about and were familiar with, and they decided to go ahead and incorporate that. Could you wait just a second, Viz? I've got something I'll read for you.
Sure.
This is several different sources. Langdon tells us, and this is S.H. Langdon in his book, Semitic Mythology, this is a comment on it. Langdon tells us that Mary worship came from ancient Babylon, where the Virgin Mother Goddess was worshipped under the name Ishtar. Elsewhere in the Near East, the Mother Goddess was called Astarte, Ashtoreth, Persephone, Artemis, or Diana of Ephesus, Venus, and Isis. This goddess, considered to be the greater than any god, with little g, was called by the heathen the Virgin Mother, Merciful Mother, Queen of Heaven, and My Lady, which is what Madonna means in Italian. Langdon says she was often sculptured in mother and infant imagery, or as a Mater Dolorum, sorrowful mother, interceding for men with a wrathful God, and thus ancient paganism was brought into the churches and lives of Christians. Got some other things here. During the Reformation, all the great Protestant leaders identified the Roman Catholic Church with Babylonian mystery religion. Rome had been equated with a harlot since the early church. The woman in John's vision had been symbolically equated to Rome ever since the 5th century. This is verified by St. Jerome, who lived from 347 to 420 A.D., one of the most noted scholars of the period, who translated the Bible into Latin. Hastings states, the identification of Babylon with Rome dates at least from the time of St. Jerome, page 84, Dictionary of the Bible by James Hastings. And then we go into what the Roman Catholic priesthood has said, in particular Cardinal Newman in his book, The Development of the Christian Religion by Cardinal Newman. Cardinal Newman admits in his book that the temples, incense, oil lamps, votive offerings, holy water, holidays, and season of devotions, processions, blessings of the fields, sacerdotal vestments, the tonsure of priests and monks and nuns, images and statues are all of pagan origin. Then Cardinal Gibbons says in his book, Faith of Our Fathers, the penetration of the religion of Babylon became so general and well known that Rome was called the New Babylon. And then in The Rise of the Medieval Church by A.C. Flick, the mighty Catholic Church was little more than the Roman Empire baptized. And then again from Langdon, from ancient Babylon came the cult of the Virgin Mother Goddess who was worshipped as the highest of the gods. Then from Will Durant in The Age of Faith, the belief in miracle-working objects, talismans, amulets, and formulas was dear to Christianity, and they were received from pagan antiquity. The vestments of the clergy and the papal title of Pontifex Maximus were legacies from pagan Rome. The Catholic Church found that rural converts still revered certain springs, wells, trees, and stones. She thought it wiser to bless these to Christian use than to break too sharply with the traditions of sentiment. Pagan festivals dear to the people reappeared as Christian feasts, and pagan rites were transformed into Christian liturgy. The Christian calendar of saints replaced the Roman fasti, or pantheon of gods. Ancient divinities dear to the people were allowed to revive on the names of Christian saints. Gradually, the tenderest features of Astartes, Cybele, Artemis, Diana, and Isis will gather together in the worship of Mary. And this is from the title of Pontifex Maximus by Mark Bonacore. One of the most amazing aspects about the ascendancy of the papacy is that the Church of Rome promotes the Pope as the Pontifex Maximus, or Supreme Pontiff. The title Pontifex Maximus is mentioned numerous times by the early Church Fathers, particularly by Tertullian, but it was not applied to a Christian bishop. The early Church Fathers say that the Pontifex Maximus was the king of heathendom, the evil high priest of the pagan mysteries of Rome. It is certainly not likely that Christ appointed Peter Pontifex Maximus of Rome. And then I can go on to say, this is some stuff I wrote from my research. Pontifex Maximus was an imperial office usually held by the emperor himself, which made one the chief priest of the Roman state cult. This state cult was a paganism and emperor worship. Understanding this concept makes it easier to understand the reasons why the Vatican and the Jesuits, along with the powers of corporate finance and industry, were the principal promoters of fascism in Italy, Germany, and Spain. The Roman Church hierarchy despised liberal democracy, socialism, communism, and any other system which would interfere with their power and accumulation of wealth. They greatly feared communism since, as an atheistic system, it sought to destroy organized religion. Although the Vatican had no love for the Orthodox Church of Russia, it eyed the ruthless persecution and confiscation of the property of the Church with alarm. The Romanists were not going to allow that fate to come to them. Just something I wrote in one of my articles.
All right. If I can I close with something?
Sure.
All right. Now, this is from the book A History of Rome.
Okay.
By Carey and Scullard. And I just found this interesting about Constantine. It said, and I'm just going to pick this up, it said, thus Constantine's attitude to the church is unambiguous, but the true nature of his, quote, conversion remains as enigmatic as his character. He has been depicted at one extreme as religiously committed to Christ, and that the other is merely using Christianity as an instrument in a policy of self-aggrandizement. The truth probably lies somewhere between. And a lot of this, there's a lot of maybe if Constantine's conversion really is on thin ice. And in the last paragraph of this one section called Economic, Cultural, and Religious Developments, again in this book called The History of Rome, it states, in the days of Constantine, Christianity was still a long way from being the universal religion of the Roman Empire. Except perhaps in Syria and Asia Minor and in the city of Alexandria, its adherents nowhere included more than half the population. In Rome and the West, they were as yet a small minority. Yet they had planted their propaganda cells in every province. Their clergy had constituted itself into a powerful, here we go, aristocracy. Above all, they had captured a high proportion of the more thoughtful inhabitants of the empire. And lastly, in the middle of the 4th century, the reluctant but honest emperor Julian, who Robert Denton is a fan of his, and apparently for good reason, he said, the reluctant but honest emperor Julian, the last eminent champion of the older order of things, was constrained to admit that the ultimate victory of Christianity in the Roman world was assured, but the point is, what Christianity was the victor? If you have a religion, why do you name it after the state?
Right.
And yet, earlier in that book, it also talks about the religion being incorporated. Interesting words that years ago you and I and many of us would have overlooked. But now when we hear incorporation, now it means something else, doesn't it, with the 501c3 with us to this day? Okay. All right. Are we all right with all that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We are, as we said, Larry added a little something new to the beginning of this, but this was the reprise of the long lost Part 4, part of We Are What We Hated. So we're going to get that out, but it's going to be followed again in regular numerical order. And when we go back now, we're going to be looking, I think, next time we do something new, because we haven't hit 6 yet. What are you going to open up 7 with?
I'd like to talk about the influence of the Nazis in the Middle East and how that relates to what's going on today, especially in Egypt and in North Africa, and how that is related to We Are What We Hated.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming on again, and also not to be generous with your time, but we're going to go until it's over, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
And whatever the parts mean, the parts mean. Ominous Parallels is finished. If you need to take another look at what was going on at this period, especially as it pertains to the beginning of World War II and how we have turned into the road to Weimar, you can see that through Ominous Parallels, and you have this as well to go through this situation, which I think Larry and I and others feel is accurate. And that we are becoming, I guess, a Nazified country. We don't like to hear that. We're not talking about it in terms of anti-Semitism. I think, and I'm going to give you the last word on this, when I think about this, I'm talking about a mean-spirited country, more militant and aggressive than thinking. Not even going to play, the anti-Semite card. I don't think that's part of this one. I don't think so. But turning a population mean and then turning that loose on the supposed enemy. And I'll leave it at that. And Larry, what's your call about our brand of Nazism?
Well, I don't think our brand of Nazism is really all that anti-Semitic, especially when you consider one of the most important elements of the far right in America is the quote, and I use this loosely, evangelical community, because that is a very pro-Zionist community and very, very pro-Jewish, very pro-Zionist. But I think we've got plenty of other people to pick on, minorities that we can hate in America. I mean, black people know that for a fact. I mean, that's been going on for an awful long time. There's plenty of minorities, and you've also got coming up with the Hispanics, and especially with unrestricted immigration coming across our borders. That's another, a group that can be used as a scapegoat. So I don't think there's any shortage. And of course, there's always going to be, the hardcore old-style Nazi anti-Semitism going on. There are always people that hate Jews. They'll always be around. And, I think that with the conditions, every time that you've seen a movement, an extreme right movement, take over, say, in Europe or in other countries in the world, it always seems to follow on the heels of a very extreme economic, stressful situation, a depression where people are out of work, and this is when people start to turn on, the whole system itself, and they develop a scapegoat. And I think that immigration is going to be a much bigger issue in the future. I know that the people out along the border, especially in Arizona and New Mexico, is it Minutemen? I can't remember.
It was originally.
Yeah, yeah. They're an extreme right group, and they're very well armed, and they are pretty radical in their viewpoints, and they're going to gain adherents. They're going to recruit, and there's already a very strong neo-Nazi movement in this country that maybe a lot of people are not aware of, but it's not just a bunch of punk kids, who scalp their heads. It's there are people behind them, and there's money behind them. And I think when you look at the Tea Party, when you look at people like the Koch brothers, K-O-C-H, the Koch brothers, the big industrialist financial machine that they are, and it's always they always have corporate sponsors for these things. That's the way it worked in Germany. Hitler didn't have any money. The Nazi Party didn't have any money when they started off.
That's right. Yeah.
So I mean, they had to get that money from somewhere, and it's all documented how they got it, and a lot of it came from America, unfortunately. So there's always that element here, and we've got them now instead of Averill Harriman and Prescott Bush and that gang. Now we've got the Koch brothers, So, and I'm sure there are others, in the old days, H.L. Hunt was always behind far right causes in this country, and his foundation and the people that have come behind him may still be in that too. I haven't really investigated it.
Well, you got to love the fact that he cornered silver like he did too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What a guy. I own
he
Costa
was a
Rica.
trip, man.
Oh yeah.
That was a guy who shot from the lip. I mean, he would say things that, were astounding, but a lot of people just weren't listening to what he was saying. But he was pretty much just calling his shots.
Yeah.
And he didn't care who heard it because he had so much money, nobody could do anything to him.
But it's true, and I mean, he's a figure that's kind of like it's kind of been forgotten about.
Yeah.
But
dangerous guy.
Yeah, and I think if you go to YouTube, there is something about him, and it's kind of interesting.
There are a lot of people that believe he was very much involved with the assassination of John Kennedy, and there's a lot of evidence that points to that. There's another Dallas millionaire who was involved with the mob and was very right wing in a lot of ways, and that's Clint Murchison, who used to be the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. And
I knew I didn't like that team for a reason.
Yeah. I knew you'd like that.
What about them boys? Screw
for all
you.
my fellow Texans out there.
Yeah. Well, what I like about you is that at least you were an AFL guy and stuck with the Oilers.
I was always a Houston Oilers fan, man. I never liked the Dallas Cowboys, but, hey, that's the way it goes.
All right. Well, we've gone 2 hours here, and again, thanks for coming on. And there's some things that you said, but I gave you the last word, and that's the way it should be. But already dangerous cogs are turning in my brain, all three of them. And I'll have at you next time around.
Okay. Well, a great deal of what I say on this show is is opinion based upon what I've seen, and trying to interpret the facts and put them into some kind of order. But a lot of times I can't make all the connections. There's so much stuff going on.
Well, when the emails come in, I'm sending them to you, so that's all right. All right, bro.
Just don't send me the brown shirts, okay?
Oh no, these are the brown pants. I'll see you.
No. I'm not going to touch that line.
And you shouldn't, because that's exactly where I'm going.